ever get that feeling, like the system just isn't built for you. You're swimming upstream no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, that resonates.
Well, today we're going deep on a perspective that digs into that. An autistic critique of capitalism.
Interesting. A unique angle for sure. Makes you think about how differently our economic systems can impact folks.
Right. Especially people who maybe don't fit the typical mold.
Yeah.
So we're diving into this article. It's called There's Gotta Be a Better Way, an autistic critique of capitalism by Jaime Hoerricks.
Okay, I've heard him.
And let me tell you, they don't hold back.
What's really cool about Hoerricks is how they weave in their own story, personal stuff.
Right.
But then they connect it to this deep analysis.
Yeah.
You really feel what it's like to be neurodivergent in a system that sometimes feels like it's working against you.
For sure. It's not just some theory. It's like real life, you know?
Exactly.
This Hoerricks talks about this pressure, this constant pressure to sell your labor to just survive, even if, typical 9-to-5 job isn't a good fit.
Yeah.
And they talk about the lack of accommodations, how the safety net, like the social safety net we have, just isn't enough.
Yeah, it makes you think, right?
It really does. Makes you realize how much we depend on this system that honestly doesn't seem to care about everyone equally.
Yeah, you take those things for granted, the accommodations, the safety nets.
Totally.
Until you see how vital they are for people who, maybe don't thrive in that standard work setup.
Absolutely. What hit me hard, though, was the feeling you get reading Hoerricks' work. This feeling of being on edge, like one bad thing happening and boom, your whole life is derailed.
Oh, yeah.
Makes you wonder how many people are out there just barely getting by in a world that just wasn't made for them.
It's a lot of folks. I think that feeling, it gets to a lot of us. And it comes down to how this whole economic system is built. Hoerricks talks about these two big problems with capitalism, right? The enclosure of the commons, and then the creation of artificial scarcity.
Fancy terms.
Yeah. But what they boil down to is this. Things that used to be for everyone, like land or resources, they get snatched up, privatized.
So instead of everyone sharing, we're fighting over things that are like deliberately kept rare.
To jack up the prices.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that forces people into jobs they got to take just to survive.
Yeah.
Even if the work is terrible or doesn't even cover what they need.
Yeah, it's like those who have the stuff make the rules and they make them to benefit themselves, even if it screws everyone else.
It's rigged, like a rigged game. Average person never had a chance. And that's what gets us to how Hoerricks talks about exploitation and this lack of democracy within capitalism.
Okay, unpack that. What do they mean?
So Hoerricks says capitalism, it's obsessed with profit, with growing. And that leads to exploitation of people, of the planet, of everything.
It's not even just making money. It's like squeezing out every last penny, no matter the cost.
Exactly. And that hurts people like, neurodivergent individuals. Think about it. Someone needs a bit more help to thrive at work.
Right.
But in this system, that help, that's just a drain on profits.
It's like saying you're only as good as what you produce. Need extra help? Well, then you're not worth much.
It's messed up.
Total dehumanizing.
And then on top of that, there's this whole lack of economic democracy.
Meaning?
Think about it. We might vote for our leaders.
Right.
But how much say do we really have in how our jobs work or how this whole economy runs?
It's a paradox, right? Like we have political say, but not economic say.
Exactly. And it makes you feel powerless.
Yeah.
Stuck in this system that doesn't care what you think or how you're doing.
Crushing, especially for those already facing hurdles.
It is. But here's where it gets a bit more optimistic.
Yeah.
Hoerricks, they're critical, but they also offer some hope. They see a better future.
Yeah, that's what I like about their work. It's not just doom and gloom. Like, they see the problems, but they actually dare to dream of something better.
They really do. And it's a cool vision. A world where people matter more than just profits. Where everyone gets the support and resources they need, no matter their, abilities or neurotype.
It's like turning capitalism on its head. Saying, what if we actually valued people for who they are, not just for what they can produce?
Radical, right. But appealing. I think a lot of people would be into that.
For sure. So how do we get there? From where we are now to this better future?
Hoerricks is realistic. It's not easy. They're calling for a movement, a real political movement, not just like tinkering around the edges. We got to go big.
Yeah.
Challenge the whole foundation of capitalism.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they actually highlight autistic individuals in this.
Oh, interesting.
It's not just about allies. It's like Autistic folks need to be leading this.
That makes sense. They often see things differently, question the norm, think outside the box.
Yeah, and we need that to build a truly just society, right?
Totally. But Hoerricks also acknowledges, the power dynamics are intense.
Oh, yeah.
Capital, the state, they're huge forces.
So how do we fight that? How do we even begin to change a system that feels so set in its ways? Hoerricks emphasizes a couple of things. Collective action. We've got to work together.
Right.
And resilience. We can't give up.
It's about knowing that we're more powerful together than we are alone, right?
Exactly. And it's about knowing that real change, it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. We need strategy. We got to learn from mistakes. We got to keep pushing.
Not easy. But, like Hoerricks says, worth it.
Totally.
Because the other option, a world where capitalism just runs wild, exploiting everything and everyone, it's just not an option.
Definitely not. And here's something else that Hoerricks points out. The way we talk about these things, it often defaults to a pro-capitalist view.
It's hard to even picture another way because everything we hear just supports the system as it is.
Yeah, it's like we're conditioned to think capitalism's the only way without ever really questioning it.
It's true. And they have this great example about those AI chatbots.
Oh, yeah.
ChatGPT.
Right.
If you ask it about capitalism frameworks, it just spits out these theories that basically all uphold the system.
Interesting.
Like classical political economy, the Austrian school, all that. Different flavors, maybe. But they all take capitalism as a given.
That's why we got to seek out those different voices.
Eh.
The ones that challenge the status quo, make us think differently.
Absolutely. And Hoerricks gives us a whole list of them, right?
Yeah.
Dependency theory, critical theory, all of...
Whoa, hold on. Not everyone's going to know what those are. Maybe we should, break it down a bit for our listeners.
You're right. Good point. So dependency theory, for instance, argues that rich nations benefit, but it's at the expense of the poorer ones.
Like, the whole system is designed to keep some countries down.
Right. It's not a level playing field at all.
Not even close. Then you've got critical theory that looks at power structures and social norms, how those things keep inequality going.
Got it.
And there's, what's it called? Autonomous Marxism. That one focuses on workers, saying they have the power to create change outside of, traditional politics.
Interesting. So it's not about waiting for politicians to fix it. It's about workers taking charge themselves.
Exactly. And then there's eco-socialism, which says capitalism's always going to want more, more, more. But we live on a planet with limited resources.
Right. We can't just keep consuming and polluting forever.
Exactly. They say we need a system that cares about the environment as much as it cares about people.
Yeah, makes sense.
And what's interesting is how these different views all kind of point to the same thing. Capitalism, as we know it, it's just not working.
So it's not about tweaks. It's about a whole system reboot, rethinking everything.
Exactly. And that's where the autistic perspective comes in. Hoerricks questions all these things we take for granted.
Like fresh eyes on the whole thing?
Right. Saying, let's think differently,
No.
challenge everything. Imagine a world that actually works for everyone, not just a few lucky ones.
And we need that message now, especially with how things are going.
Oh, yeah. Especially now. So in their 2024 update, they talk about this trend in the U.S. It's not pretty. It's this growing power of the super rich. The oligarchs, they call them.
It's been happening for years, right? But it feels like it's getting worse.
Way worse. It's like we're moving towards a system where money equals power, period.
Yeah, Hoerricks doesn't hold back on that. They basically say these rich folks have bought the presidency with dark money and just this constant media bombardment.
It's bold, but honestly, look around. You see it everywhere. These super PACs, the media blitz, the whole thing is about money influencing everything.
And the scary part is it's becoming normal, just how things are.
The media plays a huge role in that, right?
Totally.
They turn elections into these popularity contests, not real debates about the issues that matter.
And investigative journalism, the stuff that could expose all this, it's practically gone. Budget cuts, mergers, the whole thing's a mess.
It's like a perfect storm for the people in power.
Right.
Media that cares more about entertainment than real news. A political system that's basically bought and paid for.
And then you've got social media. It could be this amazing tool for connection.
Right.
But it's also being used to control what people see, what they think.
It's a double-edged sword for sure. The algorithms just push whatever gets clicks, whatever's the most dramatic. It's all about clicks and views.
So we end up in these echo chambers, just hearing what we already agree with, never getting the whole picture.
This is dangerous. It's tearing us apart.
Yeah.
Making it harder to talk to each other, to actually understand each other.
And Hoerricks points out another tactic that's being used. They call it a distraction. The attacks on trans people.
It's awful.
It really is. They talk about the millions of dollars being spent to demonize trans people, all this fear and hate.
It's wild.
Yeah.
All that money and energy spent on attacking a marginalized community while real problems just get ignored, like poverty, climate change.
They say it's not just about prejudice.
Right.
It's a deliberate strategy to keep people distracted.
Classic scapegoating, right?
Exactly. Create an enemy, get everyone riled up, and then people don't notice the real problems, the ones that those in power are actually causing.
And the people who get hurt the most, always the most vulnerable. Disabled people, neurodivergent folks, LGBTQ plus communities, people of color, they're always the targets.
It's bleak. But Hoerricks, they don't leave us in despair, right?
Nope. They end with a powerful call to action.
Resist. Fight back. Don't give up. What did you think about that part?
I think it's crucial because it's easy to feel hopeless right now.
Yeah.
With everything going on. But they're reminding us we can make a difference.
And it comes down to collective action, right? Building connections, seeing our shared struggles.
Exactly. Realizing we're not alone in this.
Right.
That together we can build something better.
So in this first part of our deep dive, we've looked at a lot. The struggles of neurodivergent people in a capitalist world.
Right?
Different ways of critiquing capitalism and how messed up things are in the U.S. right now.
It's a lot. But it's important to remember, we're not just bystanders. We can change things.
Exactly. We have power. So before we get into how that change can happen, I want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your initial thoughts? What really stood out to you?
What really gets me is how urgent it feels, Hoerricks' call to action. It's not just talk. It's like people's lives are on the line.
Yeah.
They talk about mutual aid, organizing at the grassroots level, community solutions. Like, those are lifelines.
Because the system itself isn't helping, right?
Exactly. It's like we can't wait for the system to fix itself. We got to create our own support while we fight to change the whole thing. And that's a key point.
So it's not about surviving within the system. It's about creating a whole new one.
Yes.
Right.
Hoerricks talks about taking back the narrative, pushing back against the media that just reinforces the status quo, letting those unheard voices finally be heard.
Creating a whole different culture, right? The different values.
Exactly. Where it's not all about competition and me, and education is huge. Hoerricks emphasizes that. We got to learn, both in formal settings and just out in the world, how to think critically, how to challenge the way things are.
Because if we don't understand how it works, we can't change it.
Exactly. It's about giving people the tools to see through the BS, to question everything, and to imagine something better. It's like, don't accept this. Question it. Push back.
I love that. It's about taking that control, knowing your own worth, and not letting anyone silence you.
Absolutely. And it's about connecting with other people who get it, building those bonds, and creating a force for change that's bigger than any one person.
Because real change never comes from just one person.
Never. And that brings us to something Hoerricks talks about that's often ignored. How messed up the U.S. social safety net is, especially for folks with disabilities.
Yeah, it's a big blind spot in these conversations about capitalism. Hoerricks lays it out. The stats on poverty, healthcare, housing, education, jobs, it's bad.
It's rough. It shows how the system fails the people who need it most. And it's not just bad luck. It's baked into the system.
They connect this to, what's it called? Neoliberal ideology.
Right.
The whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps thing.
It blames people for struggling when this system itself is rigged against them.
And it's even worse for people with disabilities, right? They're seen as burdens, not people who need support.
Yeah, like if you can't hack it, it's your fault, not the system's.
Yeah.
It's so messed up. The truth is, we all need help sometimes. We depend on each other.
So instead of blaming people, we got to look at the system itself.
Exactly. And ask, why are so many people struggling? What's wrong with this picture?
And that means rethinking the whole economic system, moving away from this idea that people are disposable.
Right. Hoerricks is all about solidarity, mutual aid, making sure everyone has what they need to not just survive, but to thrive.
It's a beautiful idea. But how do we actually get there? From me first to all of us together.
That's the big question, isn't it? There's no magic bullet. It's going to take a lot of things. Organizing from the ground up, political action, education, changing how we see the world.
It's like we got to plant seeds of change everywhere. In our own lives, in our communities, in the whole system.
Yeah, exactly. It's about realizing that change happens on all these different levels, and even small things can have a big impact.
So it's not about waiting for some huge revolution to happen. It's about doing what we can right now to make things better.
Totally. It's about finding those pressure points where we can push back against the system and create space for new things to grow.
So where are those pressure points? What does this change actually look like?
Well, Hoerricks talks about building different economic models like
Right.
worker cooperatives,
Okay.
community-owned businesses, time banks, things like that.
Hold on, hold on. Maybe not everyone knows what those are. Can we explain a little?
Oh, yeah, of course. So worker cooperatives are businesses that are owned and run by the people who work there. No big boss. Everyone has a say.
So it's more democratic?
Exactly. Everyone gets to decide how things are run, and they all share in the profits.
Cool. What about community-owned businesses?
Those are similar, but they're usually focused on serving the needs of the community as a whole.
So it's not just about making money, it's about taking care of everyone.
Exactly. And then time banks are really interesting. It's about trading goods and services based on how much time it takes, not money.
So instead of paying with dollars, you pay with hours.
Yep. It's a way of saying everyone's time is valuable no matter what they do or how much money they make.
I like that. These are all really neat ideas, but how do we actually start making them happen? Seems like such a big jump from where we are now.
It is a big jump. But Hoerricks says we got to start small, experimenting in our own communities, showing that it can work.
Building those little pockets of resistance, those spaces where we can try out different ways of doing things.
Exactly. And when those little experiments work, it can inspire others to do the same. And slowly, those little changes can start to add up to something big.
Like building a new world within the old one.
I like that. It's about creating those cracks, those little glimmers of hope that show us that another way is possible.
But it's not just about new economic models, right? It's about changing how we think about work, about what's valuable, about how we treat the planet.
You got it. Hoerricks talks about challenging that whole capitalist mindset that puts profits above everything else.
So it's about shifting our values away from just buying stuff and being all about ourselves, and more towards working together and taking care of each other and the planet.
Exactly. It's about realizing that real wealth isn't about how much stuff you have. It's about strong communities, a healthy environment, and connections with other people.
It's about redefining what it means to have a good life, focusing on well-being and purpose instead of just money.
Right. There's a whole different way of seeing the world.
It's like moving from scarcity to abundance, from thinking we have to fight over everything to realizing there's enough for everyone if we cooperate.
Yeah, it's about seeing our worth as humans, not just as workers. It's about understanding that we all depend on each other and on the planet to thrive.
Exactly. It's a big shift in how we see things, but it's necessary if we want a just and sustainable future. So how do we actually do that? How do we change from this mindset of scarcity and competition to one of abundance and cooperation?
It's a process, a journey. It starts with awareness, really thinking about what we believe in, what's important to us.
And then making choices in our daily lives that reflect those values.
Exactly. Little things, day by day, that can lead to bigger changes over time.
So it's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about taking those first steps, however small they might seem.
Right. Embracing the process, knowing that change takes time, and believing that even small actions can make a difference.
And remembering that there are so many people out there working for the same things.
Exactly. We're not alone in this. And together, we can build the world we want to see.
That's a good place to pause for now. But before we move on, I want to leave you all with a question to think about. If you could build society from scratch, based on cooperation, solidarity, sustainability, what would it look like? That's a big question, right? To rethink everything makes you realize we have the power to change so much if we can just break free from, the way we've always been told things have to be.
It's about imagination, isn't
Yeah.
it? We get so stuck in the limits of the current system, we forget we can build something totally new.
And that's where I think Hoerricks being autistic is so important.
Right.
They come at it from a different angle, helps us break free from those old ways of thinking. Imagine a world that actually works for everyone, not just a select few.
Yeah, and their critique of capitalism, it's not just complaining, it's like a challenge
Right.
to rethink the whole foundation.
Yeah.
How we view work, value, what it means to be human.
It's a radical shift, but I think we need that to build a truly just and fair society. So let's get practical, all right? Hoerricks talks about systemic change, but what does that look like in real life?
Well, first off, we got to ditch that every man for himself mentality that's so ingrained in capitalism. Hoerricks says we need a sense of collective responsibility to realize, hey, we're all connected here.
So it's not just about my own individual success, it's about how my actions affect everyone else.
Exactly. We got to support each other, especially those who need it most.
And that's where mutual aid comes in, right? Building strong communities where people can lean on each other, not just on the government or the market.
Absolutely. Creating those support systems outside the traditional ones. Because honestly, those systems often fail us.
Yeah, and it ties back to what we talked about with the social safety net, how it's just not enough, especially for people with disabilities.
Right. Hoerricks says we need to move away from that charity model, where help is like a gift you should be grateful for,
Yeah.
toward a model where everyone deserves support just because they're human.
A basic standard of living, no matter what.
It's exactly. A system that prioritizes human dignity and well-being above everything else. Which brings us back to that question.
Hmm.
If you could redesign society, what would it look like?
It's a big one,
Yeah.
but it makes you think about what really matters, what values we want to center.
It's about using our imaginations, right? To see beyond the way things are now to what they could be.
And I think that's Hoerricks' challenge to us, to think radically, to move beyond capitalism's limits, toward a future that's truly just and equitable.
And that message, it's so important for folks who've been pushed to the margins, told they don't belong,
Right.
neurodivergent people, those with disabilities, LGBTQ plus communities, people of color. This is a message of hope, of power.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we can create a world where everyone is valued no matter what, where difference isn't something to be afraid of, but celebrated.
And it starts with us, questioning everything, using our voices, building connections with each other,
Recognizing that we're all in this together.
remembering that another world is possible, and it's up to us to build it.
So, wrapping up our deep dive today, a few things to remember. Capitalism, the way it is now, it's broken. It hurts the most vulnerable among us.
Yeah.
We have to challenge it, not just with words, but with action.
Right. Build those alternatives.
And remember, we're not alone in this. So many people are working toward a better future.
Absolutely. Don't lose hope. Little things add up. Together, we can create the world we want.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. If you want to learn more, check out Hoerricks' article. We'll link it in the show notes. And until next time, keep learning, keep fighting, and keep believing in a better world.